The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Maynard Bangs presiding. Will you all rise for the Honorable Judge Maynard Bangs?
Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today, the court celebrates a very special milestone.
Aye, it's our Sweet 16.
That's right. 16 glorious years of movie prosecution and deliberation.
Episodes, you bombpot.
Huh?
It's been 16 episodes, not years.
16 episodes? What kind of shitty milestone is that?
Well, you have to take these little victories where you can, Your Honor. You didn't know if we'll make it to C20.
Fair point. With that in mind, in honor of this momentous occasion, we have a very special item on the docket. Today we are hearing the case of The People versus Showgirls.
Oh, dear Lord.
Aghast.
That's right. It's our Showgirls Super Sweet 16 Spectacular.
Yay. How exciting. I love a good party.
Oh, I'm well aware of that, Your Honor.
And to help out the court on this most daunting of cases, we have several special guests in attendance. Joining our jury today are returning fan-favorite guests Kirk, Thatcher, and Liesel Hanson.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm very excited to be here.
And we'll probably have a few surprise witnesses as well.
Of course. It wouldn't be a Sweet 16 without a few surprises, now would it? Now, for today's case, 1995's Showgirls. This erotic drama film, directed by Paul Verhoeven, tells the story of Nomi, a Las Vegas stripper who ascends to the heights of the Vegas showgirl circuit at the expense of those around her, and maybe even her own soul. For those unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always in this courtroom, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Now, we could have gotten anyone to adjudicate this show. Ben Haslar, Ryan Luis Rodriguez, but Maynard Bangs is what the Reels of Justice is all about. I'm dazzling, I'm exciting, and very, very sexy.
I didn't know about that.
Mr. Schlender! It seems you're appearing on behalf of the prosecution. You may begin your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, and Kirk, of the jury, what we have here before the court for our Sweet 16 Spectacular is an affront. An affront on all fronts. 1995 Showgirls was not content to be consigned to the ash bin of history where it rightly belongs. Oh, no. Instead, its necrofied corpse lingers up to the gates of our culture. Can you hear it? Can you hear the zombie barbarians? The zombarians, if you will, at the gate? We mustn't let them in. We must stand athwart this revisionist history and yell, stop. And we must yell at the top of our lungs. Movies like Showgirls, like Star Wars Episode 1, like Alien 3 are bad movies. Enough with the rose-tinted glasses. Enough with the nostalgia. Enough with thinking we are oh so clever for peeling back the layers of this stinking onion. My case today will be unique. You see, people of the jury, I am willing to accept Director Paul Verhoeven's contention that this is indeed a satire. This is indeed commentary, and it is here where I will elucidate everyone to the movie's failures. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. Miss Johnson-Brown, you are representing the defense. Please present your opening statement.
People of the jury, I'm not here to convince you that my client is innocent. We all know that it's hell of not. And its guilt is, in fact, what makes it a redeemable film. It is, in fact, so guilty that it has turned around, fucked itself in the ass, and become unguilty again. And even beyond that, it doesn't just rely on that postmodern ironic bullshit. It is actually, in fact, a Lawrence of Arabia, excuse me, let that be stricken from the record, Lawrence of Arabia-esque epic. Replace your sand with the sands of Vegas. Replace blood and sweat with boobs and more sweat. And you have the mastery of Showgirls. Does it withstand the test of time? It doesn't need to. It didn't even survive in its own time. Does it still hold its glory as a sex epic? Yes. Is it an, in fact, beautiful mirror and representation of patriarchy and what men think of women as foolish, as trivial, as sex objects to be consumed and viewed as vapid, as chip and nail obsessed, as having no relationship with other women aside from weirdly lesbian? It is, in fact, I argue, what Hollywood tries and continues to try to do with each movie it makes, which is to hammer in that women are objects, to hammer in that we're worthless. And what Joe Esterhaus and Paul Verhoeven do is what all films do. Something from, say, the beloved Leaving Las Vegas, for example. Any scene with a rape scene, any scene where there's boobs exposed, any scene where there's vagina flash deserves a second look. And this is the pinnacle of that behavior, of that Hollywood behavior. And thus, it is a perfect, uninterrupted microcosm of a larger trend in Hollywood, and it is a perfect experiment. And thus, with that, and with its genuine beauty, it is not only a redeemable film, but I argue the greatest film of all time. Number one, Showgirls. Number two, Chinatown. And they do something similar. And I'm here to prove that to you today. And each hole that the defense will poke in. Wait, who am I? The defense, the prosecution?
That's
Whatever.
you.
Your defense. Feel free to poke holes in your own case. It's fine.
Yes. Oh, there's lots of holes. Don't worry. Each hole that's poked in my case is, in fact, not a hole, but evidence that I will use. So try me.
Thank you, Miss Johnson-Brown. Prosecution, please proceed with your first exhibit.
Thank you, Your Honor. To quote Don Henley, I have been trying to get down to the heart of the matter. And to do that, we must look at the commentary put forth by this film. And this favorable viewing of the movie that some people have made their careers, and God bless them for. But this commentary, the satire, the critique of society, suffers from Paul Verhoeven's own deficiencies. His deficiencies simply as a man, as someone who I would argue can't grasp the concept of making love. Verhoeven has a reputation as a mischievous movie-making mountebank, meticulously, mendaciously manipulating moviegoers. Mamma mia. Spicy meatball indeed. So,
Objection, that is lame.
Honor, in the Sweet 16 Spectacular, I will not apologize for my alliteration. I want it emboldened on the record, underlined twice.
Overruled.
Regardless, the first pass of Showgirls, it was critiqued as a failed spectacle of the sexual imagination, a high-class drama about low-class people. But if we were to take Paul Verhoeven at his word and were to listen to these more favorable interpretations that have come out of the woodwork by the aforementioned onion peelers. I have to say, no, that this satire, when you look at his other works, which are quite apt, RoboCop, Starship Troopers, when he comes to dealing with sex, like Showgirls and Basic Instinct, we are left scratching our heads. But to quote Kenny Rogers, that's not really the heart of the matter.
What?
In Verhoeven's world, it's twisted. We have a world where sex and violence are two sides of the same coin. It's like peanut butter and chocolate. But this, my friends, is not a tasty treat. It is a toxic treat. And this is something that we have seen throughout history. As long as men have been writing women, they've been misunderstanding them. And especially in areas where sex is concerned, you only need to look at the Grecian play, Lysis. I pronounced it all day and I messed it up.
Lysistrata.
Circa 400 BC. Yes. At first blush, we would love to see this story as a great triumph of women using their sexuality to end a war. But as scholars and historians are quick to point out, such as Sarah Rudin and John Boardman, the women are portrayed as irrational, childlike, discovering their sexuality for just this momentary gain, as a stand-in, a joke for how the war could end. And what we are missing, a critical component here, and this is something that we're also missing in Showgirls, is agency. Showgirls has Nomi running from her past of being a whore. And we are treated to lines throughout the movie about her being a whore in sheep's clothing.
Objection. She is not a hooker. She makes that very clear, I believe, in the first scene that she meets Molly.
Which is precisely my point. At the end of the movie, it is revealed that she has been arrested for being a prostitute. And the crux of the movie is that she is trying to run away from that aspect of her past. She is trying to escape her previous whoredom, and it's constantly being thrown back into her face. You have Crystal saying, whatever you do at the cheetah, it ain't dancing. You have James declaring that she's still giving them TNA up on the stage. James has many declarations throughout the movie, that being one of them. And you have...
Everybody knows that dancing ain't fucking.
Exactly.
Everybody got AIDS and shit.
Yeah, man.
Everybody got AIDS and shit. And he just wanted a cup of coffee, really. But he's got to back off, motherfucker. What happens here is that Nomi is constantly confronted with her past. And so she's trying to escape this idea of being a whore, but she finds herself being a whore now. And part of this commentary is that we want to escape whoredom, that women should not be using their sexuality in this way because it is degrading. It leads to violence, as we see in the very graphic rape scene with the Esterhaus stand-in. It has to do with, I'm convinced he is. I'll explain more on that later. And Nomi's moment of empowerment then comes through an act of very visceral violence. And this has fundamentally everything to do with Verhoeven's confusion that I mentioned earlier, his coin flip, the sex, the violence, the movie spinning in midair, and you got to call it, flip it. And here we have violence. He beats the crap out of the rapist, right? And this is pretty much disgusting because this is how he sees how women can empower themselves, not through the sexual side of the equation, but through the violent side of the equation. And this denies women sexual agency, this idea that women should strive to not be whores, and I keep using that word because that is the word that Verhoeven was using throughout the whole movie, that there is something fundamentally wrong with women using their sexuality to their own gain, that it's always to be used. What he's saying is that it is always used at their expense. That's why he keeps going back to calling them whores. This is why Crystal says they sign the check, they pay us the cash, we show them what they want to see. So what we have is this confusion. Some people think Crystal is leading into this empowerment, this agency, but she's resigning to playing the man's game, man being just male patriarchy, whatever the stand-in term is you want to use for this. So by playing the man's game, you automatically can't win. What Verhoeven can't see and simply doesn't understand about women is that there is a completely different game that women can run and they can win at. And that involves trading their sexuality without shame, without apology. And this idea that he is constantly putting forward through the movie is that any kind of whoredom that we see is inherently bad, is inherently violent, and as I said earlier, is inherently done at the expense of the woman. And that is simply not true of the female experience. So if we want to go down this route of the commentary, the satire that Verhoeven is trying to show us, that he's trying to mirror back and show the audience, it simply falls flat because he just does not understand women. He does not understand sexuality, and he does not understand certainly how transactional sexuality can actually be empowering and not demeaning.
Defense, do you have any rebuttal or objection to the prosecution's points?
So that, yeah, if you want to hop in, please.
Okay, yeah. Again, so defending the indefensible. Do I object to any of those ideas that Dylan put forward? No, I don't. I agree entirely.
I rest my case. Thank you.
Yes, exactly. No, totally. I mean, and that's kind of my entire thesis. Basically, is like it's an interesting thing, and in the movie that Jeffrey made, I liked that they talked about this too. But it's like it is this kind of dichotomy, and these like two things are traveling at the same time. There's this incredibly beautiful movie that is like perfectly shot. Verhoeven knows how to shoot stuff. He knows how to direct in some ways. He does it again and again and again. I just watched Total Recall again last night, which I also really like. I had got some of the way through Starship Troopers again, and I worship RoboCop, and I watch it all the time. But what he proves again and again and again is he's definitely a master aesthetician. He can get a beautiful shot again and again and again. There's one scene in Showgirls that drives me fucking crazy. It's just like one of the best scenes in cinema, in my opinion. Nomi is sitting on the bench. In the background is like the Luxor and like whatever that fucking other ridiculous Vegas pyramid thing is, and Molly comes running out of the foreground or background into the foreground, and it's just fucking gorgeous to me, like totally nod to Lawrence of Arabia, and like that kind of stuff, just that sort of beautiful wide shot with just one thing kind of moving, or this I don't know, it's just gorgeous to me. I really fucking like it. It just like is very like drooly, satiating. So to me that,
and he repeatedly makes a very beautiful use of mirrors.
The use of mirrors, yeah.
If I could respond to this idea, Verhoeven, with this, to use a term we can stipulate, if you'd like, spectacle, I think might be appropriate.
Oh, definitely. No, I think that is appropriate because I do think definitely. I think it's appropriate. And I think he's playing into that kind of Hollywood trope. Again, that's something that Jeffrey kind of talks about in his film. But playing on the Busby Berkeley, playing on these big over-the-top sets. I mean, that is the overwhelming feeling from Showgirls. It's just like, oh my God, over the top, over the top, over the top. And again, I think there's these two dichotomies going. It's like this crazy over the top set, this crazy over the top production, these crazy over the top shots, again and again and again from the beginning with the truck, swerving, totally unnecessary. The monkeys, totally unnecessary. The club scene, totally unnecessary. Again and again and again, just excess. Or what was the word you said? Grandeur or spectacle?
Spectacle.
Totally over the top. And I think, the budget reflects that, which is to me one of my first intros to the film, which was the just learning about the monetary failure. It made back like a third of the budget in the box offices, kind of shot itself in the foot with the NC-17 rating, and then obviously you see it, and it's
which was a deliberate choice, mind you.
It was,
but definitely. I would like to speak more about the spectacle, because
Sure, okay.
obviously it permeates the whole movie, as you've established quite well.
Certainly.
But
And then I'd also like to return and address your point about women, because that is my entire argument, essentially.
absolutely, there'll definitely be time for that. So what I would like to say about spectacle very quickly is that he focuses so much on it to the detriment of the rest of the film. And I'm going to point to another film that I mentioned in my opening argument, and that's Star Wars Episode 1, which was obviously full of spectacle and technical achievement, but you had
but it looked like shit.
But you had a director like George Lucas who was focused on those things, a director like Paul Verhoeven focused on those things, and the story suffered, the acting suffered. In 2015, Verhoeven claimed that everything that Elizabeth Berkley did was at his direction. So he's basically admitting to giving her bad direction, because we can have this argument all day about how over the top she's supposed to be, but it doesn't change the fact how wooden and placid her facial expression is. It doesn't change the fact that her tones vary wildly, and we're not talking about for comedic effect or for like a mood swing effect. I mean, when she said, different places, and you did eat all the chips, didn't you? I mean, these are very bizarre scenes that don't lend themselves very well to the overall spectacle of the movie. So my contention is that this focus on the spectacle, trying to get these shots, doing clever camera work, implementing these mirrors so that we're seeing each other back and forth, that ultimately hurts the movie, and it hurts the message of the movie. If we have these mirrors meant to reflect back on us, we are not actually seeing us. What we are seeing are the aforementioned deficiencies that exist in Verhoeven, and he is projecting those onto us. It is not all that dissimilar from a case we had before, The House That Jack Built, with the director there, again, projecting his insecurities onto us, the audience.
Every single thing he does,
and we're just not seeing it. We're not really along for the ride. And so we're saying, Verhoeven, that's a neat shot, but what are you saying? What is your message? Why are you doing it this way? And before, when this movie first came out, the idea was, well, I'm trying to make a high-minded drama about, high class, low people, that kind of thing. But now we're supposed to believe, and even if I do accept the contention that it is a satire, that it is a commentary, so if we're supposed to accept that commentary, that critique, I think I've done a very good job of explaining why that falls flat, why it's very insufficient. So if he's trying to say something profound, he fails. If he was trying to make a drama, he fails. The only thing you can argue that he succeeded in was this huge display, this huge spectacle. But spectacle is not enough to save this movie from being bad, just as this same spectacle was not enough to save Star Wars Episode 1. And I think that is key, is that the spectacle, just to put a point on it, takes away from any message he is trying to deliver. And if you do receive that message, either at the time or even today, it is insufficient, it falls short, it doesn't ring true, and it's ultimately saying nothing.
Yeah, and my point is that you need to go one step further. Like, I concede every single thing you just said. To me, that's so apparent.
I rest my case. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, totally. No, I mean, to me, but it's bigger than that. To me, it's like, it is good because of that. And the mirrors, it's funny, you say it's like he fails, but it's perfect to me because it's a perfect reflection of his shortcomings, as you say, which to me are the shortcomings of our society. Perfectly illustrated, more cleanly illustrated there than almost any other place. And in its extremity, it becomes something that's really worthwhile and something that's really elevated, especially because I think it reflects the reality of what people think of women, period. And I think that Joe Esterhaus and Paul Verhoeven definitely reflect our patriarchy, reflect especially Hollywood, especially entertainment. And you see it again and again and again. And you mentioned at the beginning that that this is like, that there's no agency, that there's no, and I mentioned there's ridiculous relationships between the women. I look at the dialogue and it's just amazing. And to me, it's like, it's an incredible failure. And it's such a failure. It's beautiful. And it's such a reflection of how low men think of women that it's worth seeing again and again and again, because it places every single other film under question, in my opinion. And it begs the question. Hang on one second, friend. It begs the question to me: what film doesn't do what they do? What film actually name 5 movies that are popular that people know that actually have a woman with agency, that actually manifest what you're talking about? Or in my opinion, you're going to see a bunch of movies that pretty much just do a watered down, weak version of what Showgirls does. Again and again, from Judd fucking Apatow to, again, I mentioned one that I can't fucking fathom why people like, Leaving Las Vegas. I think that's heinous, but people love that. And like, it's not even an ironic love. Like, I had many, many discussions about it with a friend who was like, no, I just like this movie. And it's like, not in a Showgirls way. Like, you don't see how this is ridiculous. Like, what a horrible way to frame a woman. Like, what a ridiculous way to like frame sex work. What a disgusting way to use a woman as a foil. And again, you see that again and again and again. Like, it's inescapable, and that's why I like Showgirls on one level. And again, I have something to speak to about the spectacle, but I heard you had a point. If you'd like to cut in, sir.
All right. Well, I was going to say the points that you're making, though, they still are ultimately the faults of Verhoeven and Esterhazy. To expand these out, I think, is just a bridge too far, because that isn't what we're seeing in culture today. That's barely what we were seeing back then.
Okay.
The rise of pornography, sex work, OnlyFans. No, and you wanted to know a movie where you have strong females with agency. I mean, you can have something as serious as Alien. You can have even something as raunchy as Bridesmaids. You could even have something that falls short of everyone's expectations, like Ghostbusters, the remake with all the ladies. So you can have these movies that do exist with agency, with that, if that's what the one requirement you want. But I'm saying this, if you're going to, if what the problem is that it's Verhoeven's failure and Esterhazy's failure, and it doesn't mirror how contemporary society is being run at all. So we're just going to have to disagree on how contemporary society is being run, which is probably a bigger case.
I totally disagree. I'm sorry. I completely object, like I see it again and again and again. Like I don't know, like a movie like Parasite, for example, which I really liked quite a bit. And I know everybody did. And, I talked about it.
Won an Oscar.
Oh, sure. Well, that doesn't fucking mean anything to me, to be perfectly honest with you. But, so did A Beautiful Mind. I'd love to do that sometime. What a fucking piece of shit.
Challenge accepted.
I fucking hate that crap. Oh, I Am Sam. Oh my god, that's like illegal. I can't believe people made that. What the fuck is wrong with you? Anyway, but yeah, I don't know. I looked at something like Parasite, and I thought it was really interesting on first viewing. I loved the sister. I thought she was amazing. The mom, just everything was great. And then I talked to a friend who pointed out that the son has a relationship with the teenage daughter, and she's just a teenager and like a young girl. And at the end, I thought it was so interesting how she carries him out on her back and leaves her family to die. Basically leaves her father to die, which I thought was just really fascinating. And I don't know. I mean, like, I'm not saying that movie does what Showgirls does, but I am saying there's more watered down. There's interesting manifestations of sex. There's interesting uses of women. There's interesting, like, explorations of that. And obviously that filmmaker is that's another level script. I mean, Joe Esterhazy is a sexist pig. I mean, he did it with Basic Instinct. he did it with Flashdance. Yeah, no, and again, and I'm not really like, I'm not objecting to this. Like, I just think like you have to dig, you know, to really like to find a solid body of work that doesn't somehow objectify women, that doesn't somehow like use like
And
sex.
I think I provided very relevant examples.
I think that those are some, and then to me also
I
it
think one
doesn't
thing, I
detract
think
from
moving
the tools
into a
that
different
Provoke
area, though,
provided.
because we kind of cut off on a tangent, I'd like to bring
Oh yeah,
back
the
just a
sexual
couple
one.
more points about the film proper. And one is this inescapable plot point. We've been very high minded, as my episodes usually tend to go. If you listen to that Jack Bill Fight Club,
Objection, hella douchey. Objection. Yeah, objection, real big douche.
You got me.
Sustained. The court recognizes the counselor's well-documented history of douchedom.
Hey, it's the Sweet 16 Spectacular. I'm pulling out all the stops for me. I'm with it.
Okay.
All right. So
Go, girl.
anyway, so talking about the plot of Showgirls, one of the things too I would like to point out is just how, just as a story, it kind of falls apart and doesn't make sense towards the end. And I think a big part of that too is Verhoeven wanting to really stick it to Esterhazy by having that guy be the rapist. Andrew Carver as the stand-in for Esterhazy.
Oh yeah, that's fucking crazy and very interesting. I've never thought of that before.
Oh well, see, I think of tons of things. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, I like it.
But what we had, so the reason he did that is
so
because
funny, too.
Verhoeven's pettiness and his deficiencies as a man and as a director can't help but shine through. As the court may or may not know, Esterhazy and Verhoeven very famously had a falling out after Basic Instinct. Esterhazy came out against it, said Verhoeven changed and did X, Y, and Z, and I agree with all the protesters against the movie. And Verhoeven was wounded. They eventually reconciled to do Showgirls. A man with an ego like Verhoeven, my contention is they never really reconciled, and this was his way of sticking it to him. This was Verhoeven's revenge against Esterhazy, that last little bit. But the
Objection, I think that's fucking crazy. But okay, that's a $45 million stick it to, and your entire career, and they both had trouble afterwards.
Exactly, because he's crazy. And then what did Verhoeven? He was able to go back to the sci-fi well. He was able to do Starship Troopers. He did Hollow Man. He went back to Holland, where he was greeted with a hero's welcome. They threw flowers at his feet, or is it tulips in Holland? But they threw flowers at him, and he made the movie. They threw their clogs and the windmill they had spinning.
Tradition, and of course, yes, in Dutch tradition. So, quite right.
Anyway, and then he made the movie. I believe it's called was it Elle? Now that you got nominated for Oscars for and everything. So his career is just fine. And if you look at his past work, him being kind of crazy and taking huge risks, completely normal. So I am totally willing to buy the theory that the Esterhazy rapist was just a colossal FU, because that's totally within his wheelhouse. But the reason it fails as a plot point is that Nomi, as I mentioned, then she confronts the rapist, beats him up. She goes and talks to her friend. I don't know why her name just slipped my mind. I'm so sorry. Molly. She goes to talk to Molly, who's still kind of in a coma. Says, "Hey, I got him. Don't worry." And then skips town. Molly is dead, ladies and gentlemen. There is no way she's coming back from that. The mob is going to have her whacked. They're not going to be able to shut her up by just buying a dress shop or anything like that. So Nomi is basically leaving the only person who was even halfway decent to her to die. So I'll rest my case on that point right now. The deficiencies in the story are numerous, but it's none more glaring than the slop-shod ending that ultimately does not make any sense.
Yeah. And again, all of the holes you poke to me are part of my argument. I totally agree. I think it's insane. To me, again, what rape scene isn't? I can't think of fucking one. I think they're heinous and unnecessary every fucking time, and I don't get it. You know, there's not really, to me, a real necessary way. Like, I don't know, I've edited, I've filmed, I've done all sorts of shit, I've studied film. Like, I think there's many ways to convey that are way more artful. And, like, I don't understand it ever. And that one is as heinous and intense, and the only redeemable character basically in the entire thing, and the only like woman of color basically aside from the other woman who's in the show who gets fucking dropped or whatever. I mean,
she's pretty nasty.
it's a bloodbath. Yeah, no, it's like it's a total bloodbath.
These are nasty people in this film.
These are to me, these are sacrifice. Yeah, these are like cinematic sacrifices, and they happen all the time. Like, they happen all the fucking time, especially in horror films, you know, constantly. I think you see like someone who's like pitiful or like, you know, literally like inspires like empathy and literally makes you like feel for them and want to protect them, like they get whacked. That's like a classic Hollywood trope, and that it's not beyond whacking, it's unbelievable violent sexual assault. And again, the only person of color, which is another trope again, like in horror especially. But yeah, I don't think that's defensible at all. What kind of person would? But
Heaven help me, I'm going to object about this idea of the rape scenes being unnecessary, but it's a very delicate caveat, because if you look at the study of abjection, right, that is this idea of things that are particularly gruesome and violent and actually are hard to watch. So what if a quote unquote good rape scene would do would be to challenge that sensibility. I would say Verhoeven fails to meet that very high level, which is another reason the movie's bad. It's something that you have to walk a very careful rope when you're going to be doing these kinds of things in movies, right? There's a reason.
All right. Now I don't want to cut you guys off, but defense, I do believe that you have a witness here for the trial.
Yeah. Lori.
Hello.
I'd like to call Lori to the stand.
Please place your hand on this copy of Adam Neyman's It Doesn't Suck. Now, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you, Joe Esterhaus?
I do.
Please be seated or whatever.
I'm seated.
Okay. Cool. So I guess, well, we were just discussing, I think, one element of the big question about Showgirls, which is women, of course. Wondering about the role that they play in film, wondering about the intentions of the director and screenwriter in their pursuit of this film, and also wondering again. I brought up and I think also Dylan was talking about sort of like the larger implications of like how those fit into our society and why Showgirls is good. Lori, I don't know if you have anything to say about that or something else, but take it away.
Okay. Insofar as like I think it's definitely a microcosm of the patriarchy at large. I totally agree with what you're saying about that. What my favorite thing about it is, I think, is that it is kind of like a memorial to the Clinton era, like kind of, you know, where the economy was good and there was not like there was not a lot of like conflict going on, and so it was sort of like an excessive era, and this is like in my opinion sort of Paul Verhoeven's expression of like, this is what American excess looks like to the rest of the world.
And I think too, it also plays, if I may say, what it also plays off of with that era is that it is like it is seedy and it is sexist and it is controlled and written by men.
Yeah, for sure.
And like I see that like again and again and again, like pandering, like all sorts of really like limiting roles for women, especially women of color. And I think Showgirls plays on that, and especially in that 90s way, where it was like so rich in that kind of content. where it was like outrageously sexist, and our government reflected it too, like Clinton.
In every movie in that era, it was like if there was a woman in the movie, it was either if she was a lead, it was a romantic comedy, but otherwise it was like some 50-year-old man with like a 28-year-old woman and there's like a romance between them, and it's just it's like I think that the impossibilities of stuff like that are exactly sort of what are on display in Showgirls, because like none of the stuff that could happen in this movie like could actually happen in reality. It's a very overblown, like I said, kind of diorama of 90s excess. And also, what no one's talked about yet is Showgirls is essentially a spiritual twin to All About Eve.
Yeah.
And if you think about it that way,
it's like a direct ripoff.
Would you mind?
By spiritual twin, you mean direct ripoff?
Would you mind elaborating on that? What makes it a spiritual twin to All About Eve?
Okay, so in All About Eve, I can't remember any of the characters' names, so you're gonna just have to forgive
One of them
me
is
about-
Eve, I believe.
Oh yeah.
Objection.
Come on with the facts. Enough. This is America.
God. So okay, so
science.
there's essentially what makes these two films alike is that in All About Eve, it's two actresses, and there's a younger actress who kind of usurps the throne from an older actress who's played by Betty Davis, and so yes, she's so good.
Holy
and
God.
So I think like if you think about it in that respect, and it makes it just kind of a lot more fun, and I think that it's a fun movie.
I think that is something I wanted to say too. Fun. Yeah. Entertainment.
It's and well, that's about the excess of America, is like America's pretty much biggest export is entertainment industry, and so this is being directed by someone who isn't American, so they're like, okay, this is what you're overblown, like this is what Las Vegas looks like to the rest of the world, sort of thing. And I think that that's very interesting.
Well, and to me, it's like also like this is how American men, like, this is their twisted view of women, and like
yes, because of course, in most European films, like there's a lot, sexuality is treated differently. I mean, it's not as tied to violence as it is in American films.
Objection, as is tied to violence in Verhoeven's films, I think would be the more apt comparison.
Perhaps. But
I mean, wait, so I guess, Dylan, are you saying that you really feel like that women are represented positively, that there's not sexual violence, that there's not like, that this isn't like a mirror to a lot of other representations of women in Hollywood?
I'm not on trial here. Verhoeven's Showgirls is, and I'm saying the deficiencies that exist in Verhoeven's commentary on these subject matters is what makes it a bad movie.
Yeah.
Prosecutor, I'll let you question the witness when the defense is done.
Oh yeah, sorry. Anyway, let me get it together. Lori. Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, and also the entertainment value. Yeah, maybe you could speak more to how it's redeemed itself as like a cult classic.
I mean, I remember, I don't know how, I can't remember exactly how old I was. It was 95, so I was 12. So I saw all the commercials for Showgirls, and I was like, oh my God, Jesse Spano is going to be dancing. And I was so excited about it. And of course, there was like no way in hell that I was going to be able to see it because I was 12. And just the kind of flashiness and the music, the soundtrack to the movie is amazing. Like, and especially for the era, like there's Susie and the Banshees, like David Bowie, Thrill Kill Cult, etc. Like if you like kind of industrial music, it's a great soundtrack. The songs that they play within the dance numbers are amazing. I think that just on a pure flash and spectacle level, as we were all talking about earlier, it's worth its salt in that, in my opinion.
So, Ms. Kikta, you're saying that you think the dance numbers are legitimately good.
Think about it this way.
Objection. There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Shakespeare.
In this courtroom, there is objectively good or bad, actually.
Okay, so should I answer that question?
Yes. You are under oath.
Okay. Insofar as to where they take place and the time that they happened, yes, I think that they're perfectly representative of the early 90s, and like the costumes, and they're obviously put a ton of work into it because it's basically just an actual Las Vegas show being put on and recorded. So I thought that they did a pretty good job with the choreography and the costumes and all of that stuff. I love it personally, but that could just go to my taste.
Thank you.
I think it's ridiculous, but I love it. Again, this is my argument. Like, I love that scene so much when they're in the club. It's one of my favorite things of all time, where, what's his fucking name? Her friend, the Alvin Ailey guy.
James.
He's like, James, he talks to the other bouncer and he's just like, wow, she can dance, can't she? And it's like, no, she can't. She can't dance. Just straight up.
But
she looks
also
insane. Like, she's really crazy looking. And like, I love it. It's so great because the whole scene is so meticulous, like perfect. But then, and she just stands out and it's so hilarious. And like we were saying, it's like Verhoeven did that on purpose, and I guess Dylan's argument is he self-sabotaged like a $45 million sinking ship or whatever, but I think that's kind of insane. In my opinion, like I like in Jeffrey's documentary I liked, and I've seen that clip before of him like talking about the movement as like sexy. Like, to me, it's just like these two misguided idiots, and basically a lot of idiot men in the world, their view of what sexy is and of what women do when they're alone, which again is talking about tits and chips and nails.
Question from the bench. So then, in your opinion, Miss Johnson Brown, the film was intending to be sexy and failed?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so you think the film was intentionally sexy?
No.
Prosecution, do you have?
Again, it's I guess it's complicated. Like I think that they meant for it to be like over the top sexual, and yes, like capital S trademark sexy, and like I in that like super cinematic over the top way. And I again, like, I'm not sure like the level of their like, or like where it got lost exactly. In my opinion, it's like it's from the beginning and from the script and from their rooted in their sexism, which is manifested across everything. But so yeah, again, like intentional is weird. Like they don't have control. Like they know not what they do. Like name a man who does.
Again, I'm gonna defense, do you have any final questions from Ms. Kikta before I allow the prosecutor to cross-examine?
I guess
it's okay if you don't.
No, I think we're good. Thank you, Lorry.
Okay,
right, prosecutor, your witness.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kikta, we've met before. I believe we had a fantastic trial, the house that Jack built. And keeping in mind that you're under oath, you would say my arguments in that trial were excellent, weren't you?
Objection, Halloweenery. God damn it. Judge, step in here.
I do believe that I mentioned that at the time, yes.
Very good. I just wanted to stipulate under oath, mind you, in case you were being polite and sparing my feelings before.
The record will show that you're on thin ice, Mr. Schlender.
No place I'd rather be.
Schlender. Yeah, please.
So, Lorry, if I may call you Lorry, because I feel that we're friends now. Is it your contention that Verhoeven was trying to make a sexy movie or a movie about sex, or possibly both?
Objection. What is the difference?
There's a big difference that I will get into depending on the answer that is given.
Very well.
Okay, I think that he was going for more for the sexiness, and like we have established, I did think that he kind of gloriously failed there.
Now, are you one of the people who subscribes to this idea that Showgirls is a satire, is a commentary, has something to say that the contemporary reviews when it came out in 1995 were missing?
I think that it does have something to say. I think that it can be gleaned as a satire for sure, but what I would go with that is that I'm not sure that Paul Verhoeven's intention was to solely make a satire. I think that he was more focused on the sexy part of it. But
So, if I may interrupt, what was the satire of then? Would you say?
the satire is of American excess and Las
Which would
Vegas.
include sex in this picture. I mean, it is about strippers and former whores, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I don't appreciate that use of that word, but yeah.
That is Verhoeven's word, and one of the reasons it's a bad movie is in one of his deficiencies, as I outlined earlier. So it's important that we keep using it, as uncomfortable as it may be for everyone.
Okay.
And the fact that it is uncomfortable, I think, speaks to the fact that, again, it's a bad movie due to his fundamental misunderstanding of female sexuality. So if it's a satire...
Just a statement from the bench, it does seem in this film that Verhoeven is framing all sex work as whoredom. And I think
he
that's
is,
what the prosecution
and
is
part of the commentary on that he's made too, and and it's not just the sex work. The sex work's a big part of it, but if you really want to delve deep into the satire, we're all whores, man, because we all work 9 to 5, that kind of thing. My point being here, though, if you are making a satire about how men view sex, does it make sense that you would be trying to make it sexy, or would you deliberately make it unsexy to try to show them that what they're there for is incorrect? It's like that people are there for a sexy feature, and they were giving very unsexy movements. I think we can stipulate the lap dance, the sex scene in the pool. These are not sexy. These are not titillating. These are not erotic, but they are sexual. So wouldn't that make a better argument for the satire of how people view sex by showing it in such an uncomfortable way as to make people question what they view as sexy or what their expectations of sexiness are?
I mean, I think that question is going against your entire argument, and I would say yes.
It's not going against my entire argument, because I've conceded that I'm willing to accept that he was trying to make a satire, and I'm trying to establish the terms of that satire being wrong.
I think that it's so hard to say whether or not what he was intending at the time, because I think in modern interviews he backsteps, and so it's impossible for me to tell you like exactly what he was thinking. There's no way.
Well, let's look at it this way then. Let's look at the contemporary reviews that viewed it, even actor Colin McLaughlin saying, like, make no mistake, we were making a serious drama. Does this movie succeed or fail as a serious drama?
I think that it succeeds in a movie that was made in the time that it was made, yes. Like, if for a movie that came out in 1995, yes, I think that it did.
So you would watch Showgirls and say that is a successful serious drama?
I mean, in some ways, yeah.
We'll have to let the jury decide on that then. No further questions, Your Honor. Thank you very much for your time, Lorry.
Thank you. And Ms. Kikta, before I let you go, so then, in your opinion, back to the point of sexy, you believe that the pool scene where she thrashes around in the water violently.
No.
One second. The lap dance scene, these were made to intentionally straight-faced be erotic.
Well, they weren't made by me. I would not make those to be. I mean, I don't find it that way, but I don't see the.
But you believe that Verhoeven believed that to be very sexy.
Yeah, I mean, you can watch some of his other movies and see, like, even in Basic Instinct, like, the way that he portrays sex in that movie is, like, over the top and doesn't make any sense.
And through violence, again, his whole commentary falls apart. If we're accepting the fact that he's making commentary and satire, we have to look at the way he views sex, and he inherently views it with violence. And this confused notion robs women of agency. It's a very weird notion that Paul Verhoeven has. It is a failure on his part.
Okay,
and that message simply
thank you,
does
Mr.
not come through.
Prosecutor. I think we've heard your points about the
Could
lack
I-
of agency in the film. Yes,
Your Honor,
Ms.
could I
Kikta.
clarify something from earlier?
Yes.
When I'm talking about that, I think the dancing is good. I was not talking about the lap
No,
dancing
I
scene.
understood that,
I was
but
talking about the
I understood.
the
I understood
show.
that.
Oh,
You
yeah.
meant the, you meant the. I understood that you meant the on-stage dancing in the Showgirls show.
Yeah.
Was at least an entertaining floor show, for what it was. But you have clarified that you did think that those scenes, were at least intending to be sexy and failed.
Yeah.
The pool scene. But very good. We have another witness, I believe, that we'd like to call in. Bailiff, can you swear in the next witness? I believe we're calling Mr. Jeffrey McHale.
Yes, hello.
Hey, who took my book of It Doesn't Suck? Mr. Schlender, give that over here. That's not for you. Now you put your hand on this. You put your hand on this book and raise your hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very good.
Cool. And am I
Your-
first then?
Your witness, Paige.
Okay, cool. Hi, Jeffrey. Thanks for being here. I loved your movie. I'm a huge Showgirls fan too.
To clarify for the court, I would like to ask a question from the bench to the witness, Mr. McHale. What is your relationship to this film, Showgirls?
I am the director of the feature documentary You Don't Know Me, which is about the afterlife of Showgirls.
Very good, very good.
Paige.
Paige.
Yeah, thank you. I watched that and I really liked it a lot. Yeah. I was first introduced to it by Showgirls by a friend who was like a master of film, period, and then also just like a master of irony. So I've always kind of come into it like laughing, and like knowing like what it was, and like I feel like I'm trying to like speak to why it succeeds so well within that, and I love that your film speaks to that too. Yeah, I mean, I guess my first question is just like, can you speak to some of the ways that like Showgirls is like still relevant and like still valuable and like still speaks to like some trends in film and in entertainment?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
In the world.
I think, it's funny because I think we're, as one of my contributors said in the film, we're still talking about Showgirls because we're not done with it. We're not done kind of trying to wrap our brains around the film itself, the response to it, and just the way it has lived for these last 25 years. And so I think it's unique in that sense. I don't know how many films from 1995 are kind of getting this much attention and just could be debated as intensely as we've heard here. So I think it's interesting. I think it holds, and there it does kind of question the what you mean by failure, what you mean by success, because from like if you're looking at from a commercial standpoint, it made back all of its money in VHS sales. So even by that sense, it hasn't failed. And the fact that we're still talking about it now and still have people flocking to it. I mean, the LGBT community, which I'm a member of, adores the film. It's one of the three to the trilogy of camp. And so I think that you can have a film like Showgirls that has faults. I don't think anyone could deny some of the faults within it, but it succeeds because of those failures, not in spite of those failures, I think.
A question from a bench: would you perhaps list some of these faults that you feel the film does have?
Well, I mean, I think it's depiction of women and of its depiction of sexuality. I mean, the sexual violence in it. I think that all of those are questionable. And then, just from a a filmmaking standpoint too. I think there's a lot of things that most, some people would have done differently. But I think all of those decisions and all of those choices and all of those quote failures add up to something really special.
Yeah, I agree. And I totally agree. And again, like to me, I see it like again and again as this sort of like beautiful and hideous and perfect and completely depraved like manifestation of, I think, these like larger trends of how women are represented. And again, I think the gratuitousness of every rape scene. To me, it's like they're all like that. There is no way to do it right, so don't. And or I just haven't seen it, especially from a man. And I think that's kind of a point too. Like I wanted to go back to something that Dylan kind of said, and where it's like kind of pointing to a couple of these films that are like by women. And I do think it's important that like this is a film by men, like, and it's damn clear, like that's like, and that's why it's. I mean, like so many movies are, and so it's like it feels like horrible to give it more attention almost, but it's the pinnacle of it, and it does what everybody does so many times. And like, yeah, I agree that those failures are present everywhere, and they're just like really hyper concentrated in Showgirls.
Another question for the witness, Mr. McHale,
Yeah.
do you feel that the film was intending to be sexy or not?
I feel, well, I think with that question about whether Showgirls was intending to be sexy, I think Verhoeven, looking back on his experience, I think context is a little important, and he did, he came off of Basic Instinct right after Showgirls. He had to cut Basic Instinct down, quite a bit to get to the end, to the rated R rating that he was contractually obligated to deliver. And when he got the deal to do Showgirls, in his contract he was allowed to deliver an NC-17 film. And so I think he's a provocateur. I think he just wanted to kind of push the envelope and kind of see how much he could get away with. And so I think as far as whether it was supposed to be sexy or not, it's hard to kind of get into what his intent was, because his response has fluctuated so much over the years. But I think he was trying to make a film about power, not about sex, which he said before. And I think that's obvious. As sex, and using sex as as
a weapon.
So it sounds like you're saying he was not trying to make it sexy.
Well, whether people were going to like get off or on this thing, I don't think that's what he was intending, but I think he wanted
no further questions for me, even though that was me interrupting. I think that gets to the heart of the matter.
But what I mean is whether it was supposed to be sexy or whether it wasn't supposed to be sexy. I don't know.
Is it a sincere representation of like women's sexuality? That's, I think, a different way to put it, and an important rephrasing.
Yeah, like whether someone finds it sexy or not. I don't really. That's not. I don't think that's hard to, I think, to accomplish. But yes, the depiction of female sexuality, I think, is sincere. But from the standpoint of two white cisgendered straight men, I think it's what makes it so ridiculous, I think.
Yeah. And I think something too that they talk about that's always interesting, and you touch on power, which I think is really important. And part of, to me, again, why it is an interesting movie, and like why the like form reflects the content. It is in the vein of Chinatown, like an exploration of sex, men, power, rape, like all sorts of depraved shit. And also, side note, I think Chinatown is a great example of not needing to show a rape scene and still making it motherfucking horrifying. But anyway, moving on from that. I guess like something I wanted to touch on too, I know we're kind of hustling here, is the spectacle and entertainment value. I guess my question is like, why is movie? Like, why do we movie? Why, and like, does this like achieve that ultimate like entertainment, like over the top, like engaging from beginning to end? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't stop. I mean, even, from the first 6 minutes, there's two car crashes. Nomi throws up. A knife is drawn. A fortune's won, fortune's lost. And I think it just doesn't stop from there. And I think when you watch it, kind of not knowing anything about it, I mean, it's like nothing you've ever seen before. And I think that it's special in that way, in that I don't think a movie like this will ever get made again. And I think if we're just trying to decide whether it's good or bad, it's hard, but I don't think that's the question. I think it's going to endure regardless of whether
Objection.
Whatever
That's
we decide
exactly
today.
the question.
I know.
That is exactly the question.
I guess my last question, Jeffrey, is like, maybe you can speak to a little bit more, since it is difficult. Again, as I said, nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Can you speak to why it's important to you, like the other reasons why you love it and why it is capital G good to you?
I mean, it just means a lot for the LGBT community. I mean, it's one of the films that I think we flock to. It's one of those films that, I think a lot of it has to do with the way, the film itself. I mean, it's so over the top. It's so, you're here, you're following, it's just all about Eve, kind of modern day reinterpretation in Vegas. So it's sleazy. I mean, the lines are ridiculous. So you have all these surface level aspects of it that, queer people are kind of just drawn to automatically. But I think that there's a lot deeper in that, I think that there is something aligned with the story of Nomi and her as a character, and, the LGBT community as well. I mean, the film was rejected. I think that Elizabeth Berkley was rejected after that. And I think, it was us who took it in and embraced it and celebrated it for the last 25 years. And, I mean, the story of Nomi Malone, it's a hero's journey, and I think a lot of people can relate to many aspects of her character and the story. And, I'd like to say, it doesn't, I don't think you have to have, kind of feminist principles like guiding the production of the film in order for people to find those messages within it, and I think that's something about Showgirls that I think is so interesting and beautiful.
And Mr. McHale, could you also comment on the parallels between the LGBT experience and Nomi's in how she makes a fresh start?
Yeah, it's like I said, it's hero's a journey. Someone who sets out, she follows her dream, she moves to the big city, she finds her chosen family. Once she's there, she uses her strength and her sexuality to fend for herself. And, I think that's a story that many queer people can relate to. She fights to be seen, to be heard, to be recognized. And, I think what queer person hasn't had to do that at some point,
I think something I'm curious about too, if maybe you can speak to. You mentioned, and I love the comparisons with in the trilogy, like you talk about, excuse me, with Valley of the Dolls and Mommy Dearest.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what is it? What is it about like that woman character at like the center, and like, why is that so like resonant and like so over the top, like, and why is that, I think, like so magnetic?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could just see those actresses kind of pouring their hearts and souls into those performances, and they're passionate, they're over the top, they're exaggerated, and I think that it's something obviously we are drawn to, something we can laugh at, something that we defend, it's something that we and then just looking at the way in which those actresses were treated after those films too, and so Patty Duke eventually had come around, Elizabeth Berkley has come around. I don't think Faye Dunaway has really embraced Mommy Dearest. No, I don't expect that anytime soon. But I think, it's why we love those films, those performances.
Totally.
It wouldn't be the same without them.
Yeah. Definitely, and I think that is part of why it still resonates, and like why it's just so amazing. I was revisiting Mommy Dearest again recently too, and it is like it's so impassioned, and it's so like it's so present, and it makes you feel yourself, and like it's self-conscious, and like the way it like plays on like I think laughter and like discomfort is just like it is really powerful, and like to me, and like I was saying earlier, I don't know if you caught this, but it does like cast a total like it casts a shadow over like all other films to me, because like you start to see these lines, and like you start to see these patterns of representation like all over the place, and like it's exhausting, and like but it's hilarious in Showgirls, and it's sort of a relief, and like yeah, like the dance instructor character, like oh my god, like just like that kind of stereotype, and just finding like the catharsis of that line thrust it is like
Joy.
God, unreal. It's so deep. It's just like there's so many lines like that. Like that line, like must be nice having somebody, or like come on you, or whatever. Like like that, like is so deep and meaningful to me. I like totally relate to that. Like I don't know. It's like it's just sort of like the misguided shit that men say to you. They walk away. You're like, what? What did I just fucking say? Like, and then it's a scene. Moving on. Okay, it's like, so deep. Yeah, totally. I love it.
If I could jump in for 1 second here.
One second. Do you have any further questions, defense, before we pass this over to the prosecution?
I guess any like final remarks, Jeffrey, in defense of Showgirls, and like
I think it's just what it will live on. I think it will live on. I think we haven't done, we're not done figuring it out yet. I think 20 years from now, I think we'll still be kind of debating its merits. So
yeah.
Reels of Justice, Sweet 1600.
Showgirls, still good.
So, prosecution, this will be your witness, but before we pass it over, Jeffrey, would you mind, for the court's edification, what do you think the purpose of Showgirls is? What do you think its mission statement is?
I mean, what do you think I was going to ask him, Your Honor? Come on, stop stepping on my case.
Prosecution, your witness.
Thank you. First of all, Jeffrey, thank you for joining the court. I also watched your movie. I paid full price for it on Amazon Prime. Available now. You can get it. My question to you, it just dawned on me, really.
Objection, shameless plug, but deserved. Go on.
The clouds have parted, the crepuscular rays have hit my head. What would you say is the purpose of Showgirls? Why was it made? And one of the reasons.
Great question.
Thank you, Your Honor. And
So
one of the
original.
reasons I want to pick up where the defense left off with Robert Davi's admittedly hilarious lines. "I must be nice not having anyone come on you." The defense would have you believe that Verhoeven wrote that straight. Like this was supposed to be like a serious drama, and that was supposed to be an actual line that wasn't delivered for a chuckle. So is this movie a satire or a commentary, or was he making a straight drama?
The first question, what was the first question? The purpose of it, or what? Why was it made?
What do you think the film's mission statement?
Yeah.
What was it? What is it trying to say, if anything?
I don't fucking know.
You made a whole movie about it, man. Come on.
I think. And what was the second question? Whether it's a satire, whether it was a satire or not,
whether it was a commentary, a satire, whatever the word the onion peelers like to use for it, or whether it was an
objection. That onion peeler comment is starting to sound derogatory.
I mean, it's a little bit. Permission to treat the witness as hostile, or at least permission for him to treat me as hostile.
We're all hostile. This whole court's out of order.
I think, I do think it's a satire. I think just looking at Verhoeven's work as a whole, he's a satirist, and I think he plays with that in every single one of his movies. So I don't think he would have just skipped over his use of satire for Showgirls. So whether it succeeded in that or not, I guess that's what we're debating. But I think it is a clear commentary on, America, American greed, consumption, and what better city to set that in when in Las Vegas. It's, Las Vegas is uniquely American. There's no other city like it in the world. So I think it, I think it's clearly a satire, and I think,
Very good. So you would say thing like the aforementioned lap dance that we were discussing, that wasn't done to actually be sexy, erotic, or titillating, though it was sexual. So getting back to an earlier point about how a movie could be about sex without being sexy, would you say Showgirls falls into that category?
Yes, I do.
Very good, very good. So then we have to look at, would you say Verhoeven's understanding of female sexuality is sufficient?
What? His understanding of female sexuality is sufficient.
Yes. Would you say what his satire, his commentary, does it come through? Does it ring true here?
I would question.
As it relates to sexuality.
I would question both him and Esterhaus's, idea of female sexuality.
No, as would I. It's basically the thrust of my case. So I'm glad that we agree. I should have called you as a witness for the prosecution. So would you say, with your now admitted agreeing with me about their fundamental misunderstanding of female sexuality, but also they're trying to make a commentary on it. No, but they're trying to make a commentary on it, though, you would say. So it is a satire, and one of the things that they're making a commentary on is female sexuality, and they're failing miserably, wouldn't you say?
They're failing miserably, but I think they succeed. They have wound up succeeding through those failures in a way in which that wasn't intended.
So it was an unintended satire, or that the satire was just so.
I think the success.
Mishandled.
I think the success was obviously, every director would want to succeed with their film, but I think in the way in which it succeeded is a way in which wasn't originally intended, and so you can still make a film about that, about sexuality, using female sexuality, commenting on it, fail, but then succeed in another way in which I don't think any of them anticipated.
So Verhoeven has stumbled into making a good movie, or is this a bad movie that happens to be entertaining?
It is I'd say it's a masterpiece of shit.
A masterpiece.
Could you define that? Could you define that for the
court? I would love to hear what that is.
Well, yeah. If you look at the three, I mean, this was coined in Adam Naiman's book, which I think I was sworn in on.
Great book.
That's the evolution of the response to Showgirls: piece of shit, masterpiece, and masterpiece of shit. And so I think that's where a lot of people have kind of landed on. Just is it outright trash? The way in which it was originally viewed and the reception of it, and then is it a masterpiece, as some people would argue, or does it fit into this weird kind of third category, which is a masterpiece of shit? It succeeds because of those failures. So
masterpiece of shit. It makes me think of two more questions for you, Jeffrey. Again, I thank you for your time. And those last two questions are. If you pour a glass of wine into a barrel of sludge, what do you have?
A sludge with a little bit of wine.
And if you pour a cup of sludge into a barrel of wine, what do you have?
You have some sludgy booze.
None of it drinkable. You have two barrels of sludge. You have a masterpiece of shit. You have a bad movie. No more questions. Thank you.
Understood. Okay. One final question from the bench then. Jeff, do you think that this film's commentary is on the sexuality of women or men's exploitation of the sexuality of women?
Objection. Define the difference.
Well, I would say I don't have to. That's true, but I would say I was making.
Oh, is that? I'm sorry. That's from the bench. I'm sorry.
That's one of the thrusts of my.
Sorry, Your Honor, or whatever.
Can you repeat the question again?
Do you think this film is a commentary on women's sexuality or men's exploitation of women's sexuality?
I think it's a commentary on our society's exploitation of women's sexuality, not just men. You know.
Okay.
So yeah, I would.
Fair.
Yeah. Was that it?
Yes, that's fine. So there are no more questions. Then I'd like to hear closing arguments from the prosecution and the defense, and move on to jury deliberation. Mr. Prosecution, you may begin your closing arguments.
Thank you, and I would like to start by reading a poem. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to do that again. All right. We had a very interesting conversation about Showgirls today. And a lot of the arguments that we were making overlapped. And the reason they did is because this is a bad movie. So the arguments for why it's bad are the same arguments for why it's so bad it's entertaining. This is not to say you should never see Showgirls. You should. You should look at it. You should examine it. You should be critical of Showgirls. But you must have the understanding that you are viewing a bad movie. You are viewing a bad artifact. You are viewing the failings of an otherwise competent director who we've seen with other competent pictures. This one falls flat. It fails. It's bad. It suffers for it. Thank you for your time, everyone. And again, a big special thanks to our two witnesses.
Very good. Ms. Johnson-Brown, you may proceed with your closing arguments.
Yes. So even the prosecution had to admit Showgirls is worth at least one watch. And he even admitted that it's worth enough of a watch to obtain an objective, subjective, co-objective, queefjective opinion on it yourself. Donut. So to me, that in and of itself speaks to something. Something I'd really like to hammer in is, again, why is movie? Entertainment. This movie is fun and memorable and enjoyable from the beginning to the end. You can come in the middle, you can come in at the beginning, you can come in at the very last part, and it's worth checking out as much as you can, I think. And I see something different in it every time. So in that aspect, to me, it's a valuable film. Again, another traditional view of film, like analysis, in which it's valuable to me, is the outrageously beautiful aesthetics in cinematography. I think, it's trashy and like a mess. The lipstick is legendary. My dad, when I was in high school, used to constantly be like, wow, Paul Verhoeven lips. Okay, all right. And, it's legendary. It's over the top. It's extreme, but to me, it's like, I look at those shots and there's not a single one out of place. It's so beautiful. It's so smooth, and it really is well put together in that way. So then, moving to the ironic, or rather the bad aspects of it, again, the script and the acting. To me, both of those are really valuable cinematically and culturally and entertainment-wise, because they are extreme manifestations of larger trends in our world, in entertainment, in our society in general. I don't think that there's an example that's been put forward from any contemporary movie that didn't involve a woman falling in love with a man, or having a white woman as the center. Again, I think we're still really bound to those storylines. I think that's still really relevant. I think if you tune into network television, you see these sexist stereotypes reflected again and again and again. I think if you turn into either of the national conventions, you see these sexist stereotypes reflected again and again and again. You see this pandering, this sort of swing and a miss pandering, which is, I think, what Joe Esterhaus and Paul Verhoeven do, which, like, across the board, it's like a swing and a miss, which I think Jeffrey spoke to as well. It's like an extreme failure that has become a success. And again, my argument is it's like representational qualities are worth examining because they reflect our society. And the acting, I think, again, stems from Verhoeven. He's admitted it himself, and they reflect how men view women. And I don't think that there's enough examples to contradict that in order to have a solid enough defense against that reality.
Okay. Well, thank you both. You've given the jurors plenty to think
Thank you
about.
so much, Jeffrey, Lori, Rob, Dylan, everybody, Brian.
Members of the jury, Mr. Thatcher, Miss Hanson, Mr. Haslar, you have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict.
It's the only one over there that doesn't say bathroom on it. All right. Well, they gave us a lot to think about. They talked about the movie longer than the movie. Mr. Thatcher.
That was my first comment. The debate about the movie was longer than the freaking movie. Yeah, I mean, I think we're back to the same thing we were when I was defending Casino Royale and movies like Plan 9 from Outer Space. A movie that's so bad it becomes revered for its badness. And this is one of the things, I've been in actual juries where you have to go back to the judge and say, okay, what are we actually deciding here? If it's a good movie or a bad movie, culturally, historically, it's like art history. You can look at things outside of their intrinsic value as art. My feeling, just briefly, is that it's a bad movie, and there's a lot of things that are entertaining about it, just like Plan 9 from Outer Space, just like Casino Royale. But is in and of itself as a movie, to me, when I hadn't watched it since it came out, I couldn't even remember, except there was lots of boobs. That's all I remembered. And I couldn't.
That poster, right? That poster was beautiful.
Accurate.
I mean, it was literally just a boob fest. And I thought, well, it's like a softcore porn movie done by two guys who have only dated hookers or something. I felt like it was guys playing with Barbie dolls. It was two 14-year-old boys who didn't have a sister and were raised by,
growing up a little bit.
Yeah, and we're playing with Barbie dolls about this is what it's like in Vegas. So, I get the campiness of it, and I get the slice of life or the dissection of American, white cis males' attitudes towards women, although I think that's painting with a big brush, but particularly Verhoeven and Esterhaas. But is it a good movie? I think at the end of the day, I'm like, oh God, no. It's the acting and the dialogue are so bad. I mean, it's the argument that it's a good looking movie is certainly true. And there's a lot of good looking boobs in it. I mean, there's not one woman in that movie. Even the overweight, campy burlesque lady has nice boobs, the one who Mama, they're not like, I mean, whatever.
Pepperoni-ish. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. They're not something she's embarrassed by. Everyone has lovely breasts. That's about the nicest thing I could say about the movie. I just found it like eye-rollingly bad. And I like boobs. I'm a straight white male. You don't have to twist my arm to go, hey, here's a movie that's got a lot of, but and I think my comment when I first saw it was exactly this. Like, how could someone make a 2-hour plus movie with more boobs than I've seen probably in my lifetime? And I was bored out of my mind. And I think that to me speaks to it's campy and entertaining and eye rolling, but as a good movie, no.
But you don't buy the argument that we're spending all this time talking about it, so at least there's like something interesting that makes it good.
The same thing about Casino Royale and Plan 9 from Outer Space. But are they good movies? No. But are they entertaining? Are they valuable slices of life about filmmaking or, even historically interesting? Yes. But are they good movies? No. But that's, again, even why the defense said that's why they're revered is because of their campiness and their badness. So they're good, bad movies. Then you start going, okay, we start getting into semantics. Yes, they're bad movies that are entertaining. So I wouldn't say they're good, but I'd say they're very entertaining or even culturally, historically interesting, but they're not good movies.
Miss Hanson, my former nemesis, now friend, what did you think about it?
Oh, hi. This case aside just for a moment, I watched this movie recently for the first time in preparation for this trial, and I gotta be honest, I feel like my main problem with Showgirls is that it is not over the top enough for me.
Right.
Oh.
I
yeah.
I will say I watched it, unfortunately, because of our current fucking fucked up world, I watched it by myself. And I was on like a group video watch, but in the experience of being in a room watching it by myself, sober and quiet and alone, I feel like is not the optimal viewing experience for this movie in any universe. Like, I want to be in a room packed with people who know this movie, who love this movie, who are heckling, who are laughing, who know the songs and the dance routines, and who are having a great time. And here, I feel like both sides made really strong arguments. But I'm very interested to hear what the other jurors have to say, because I really do feel like
You want to hold your
I feel that's the problem, is that I feel there's been so much good argument from both sides that right now I feel very similarly to the way that I did right after I finished watching the movie, which is that I feel bewildered and confused, and I feel like I can understand why people enjoy the Showgirls experience.
Oh, totally.
Completely.
Just like
However, yeah, oh, absolutely. And I'm a big fan of So Bad It's Good. I love that kind of stuff. But for me, it wasn't actually bad enough to really dig into. The moments that I enjoyed the most were those totally baffling button the scene jokes, oh, nobody came on you today or whatever. Those moments, I felt like I knew the movie that I was watching.
Yeah.
And in all other moments, unless I was watching Gina Gershon, I felt like I didn't know what I felt like there was no clear intent for how I was supposed to be feeling at all. I felt a little emotionally lost, let's say. God. So I'm interested to hear what the other folks have to say about this.
I think I'm the only other one. For me, it's just that circular logic. Like, I go round and round whenever people talk about this movie. It's like, oh, women treated poorly, and then you go around like, oh, but it's made by sexist men. And then you go around again saying, well, it's a satire that you just don't get, and going back around to, well, what's the satire's message? I don't fucking know. It's just It's like you can't really put it in that box. So it is a cult film. I get that. I get that it very much appeals to a certain group of people. And I do get that it might be sort of accidentally interesting in spite of itself. So that's where I'm at. Like, it's hard for me to like say it's bad. It's really hard for me to say it's good. I can't do that. It's right there down the line for me. And I think we're all sort of in that zone where it's just, where does this thing fit? I don't know what to do with it.
Well, I think part of what you both said that resonates really strongly with me is particularly when you said it didn't go far enough. Like, if you watch Starship Troopers, just bring up a Verhoeven film, and RoboCop, the satire is very evident. And even despite the violence,
absolutely.
You're well aware of an intent of the filmmaker to make a comment about mainly political comments. If this was a comment on sexuality in America between cisgender or women and men, again, I go back to, it seemed like two 14-year-old boys who, their limit of experience as women was Barbie dolls. And this was their fantasy about, ooh, this is what women are like when they're naked and working. And I was like, yeah, it's fast.
But wouldn't a fantasy involve something a little
fantastic? Absolutely.
a less business-like approach to? I kind of approach. I kind of appreciate the sort of business-like. It makes me feel. I come from a theater background, so I kind of like that you're seeing enough, nudity that you kind of get blind to it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and like strippers, like, they're always like very sexy and in your face, and then you go backstage and they're just like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
They don't want to even have anything to do with anybody.
Yeah, they're fighting.
Do you go backstage at
I
at
don't,
strip
but
clubs often?
I've heard stories.
It's not anymore.
Honest question, no
our
judgment.
president does. It was
Yeah,
Showgirls, yeah.
I heard it from him.
We do not speak its name.
I just said our president, or not my president, but whatever.
Ugh.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
think, but what you're saying is it's really hard to, it's not, you can't say it's a terrible movie, like not worth watching, but you really can't say it's a good movie. And I'll just go with basics like character and dialogue. Nomi is a complete cipher. She acts totally banana pants in every other scene. There's no way to track her. I mean, the whole thing's a loop. She comes in and denies she was ever a prostitute, and then at the last 10 minutes, you find out, oh, she really was a prostitute, and she leaves. No, I mean, and she learned a valuable lesson. I don't know. I don't know what she learned. I don't.
This is sort of yeah. Totally. This is sorry to step on what you were saying, but I got excited. My experience of watching it, this is sort of apropos of nothing, so I'm just going to throw it out real fast, is that as I was watching it, I started developing my own backstory, which I found really, really exciting, which is that Nomi is like an alien skinwalker, which is why, for one thing, why she's so reluctant to speak about her past. For another thing, why she eats like she's never eaten food before, and for another thing, why she is so extreme in every situation, because she's mirroring TV and the ways that she thinks, mirroring the ways that people around her are acting in these extreme ways, but always in the wrong moment. So if anybody is listening and wants to buy my pitch for just an alternate dimension Showgirls, that movie I love.
I think the term is retcon. You just retcon Showgirls, in which she's like Daryl Hannah from Splash. She's a mermaid or an alien, and she thought Vegas was the cool place where all the sexy girls go. If that were true, if they stuck that on,
but more of a Terminator. She's a Terminator.
She's like the girl from Species, but like more incompetent.
So
she's a Terminator who wants to dance. I love
it's a great
it
idea.
Personally.
and that would explain her complete lack of human attributes during the movie, because she was just so bizarre.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It explains everything.
Fell into place. Brilliant.
That's how sex is
right,
done.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
You have an epileptic seizure in the pool, and that's sex. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm just going to throw it out there. Guilty. Mr. Thatcher, where do you land?
Yeah, guilty. Bad movie.
And Miss Hanson?
You know what? I didn't think I would ever say this, but our defense's argument got me thinking about enough stuff that I can see myself watching this again.
Wow.
And because of that, because of the passion that they showed in their arguments on the defense side, I'm going to say not guilty.
Well, yeah, Liesel.
Fuck yeah. Right? You talked me into some shit that I was not prepared to be talked into. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. Just like Plan 9 is an interesting movie to watch. It's bad, but it's interesting.
I love it.
I think that's where we land. Let's give our verdict.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. In the case of the People versus Showgirls, we find the defendant guilty.
Oh, that's bullshit.
The
verdict is so rendered. I would sentence the makers of Showgirls to years of scorn and loathing, and it appears that society has already done that for us, so court is adjourned.
This is Stinky Whizzleteats reporting to you live from outside the Reels of Justice. Mr. Schlender, would you care to share your thoughts about the jury's verdict?
Ah, Stinky, do you smell that? That's the smell of victory. That's the smell of justice. I believe in the Reels of Justice. I believe in the work that we do here. And today shows why our work is so important. Good day.
Thank you for whatever that was. And here comes Ms. Johnson Brown. Excuse me, could we get a word on how you feel about today's verdict?
Like I said, we've been robbed. We all know that justice wasn't served today, if it ever was ever on any occasion. And especially in the case of Showgirls, I think that it's been an incredible misserving of what's right. And mark my word, we will be back in court to contest this, if there is such a thing. Yeah. Rabble.
Thank you very much. That's all we have for the courthouse today. Let's go back to the studio for post-trial analysis.
Yeah!
Oh,
Showgirls! Super! Sweet 16 spectacular, baby!
We did it.
So spectacular.
And we had spectacular technological problems. We lost Ryan for the whole recording. I'm sorry, Ryan.
Ryan, we missed
so Ryan,
you.
I'd like to give you the floor right now to tell us, if you had been in the jury room, what would your verdict have been?
So, I saw Showgirls for the first time this year. Before that, I was familiar with it through the VH1 cut, which has kind of been
yeah, when
notorious
the
in the
CGI
years.
like swimsuits on them and stuff.
Yes, that one.
Whoa!
New
I
media
need to
word
see that.
pop up video.
I need to see that.
It is a fantastic mess. It's somehow like they cut out literally all the stuff that got it even would have gotten it a PG-13 rating is all gone.
Wow.
And in its place is this weird, formless, shapeless kind of like H.P. Lovecraft monstrosity, like a Cthulhu.
Okay, that sounds amazing, though.
No, exactly. I want to see this.
You combine that with Liesel's alien version.
Yeah, it's like the TV cut of Scarface, right? Where just like you have to see it.
Yeah,
it's so distracting, like these neon pink bikinis. It's just like that's all you're thinking about. You're not thinking about a thing they're saying.
And they don't move with the actors, so they're just kind of there, superimposed, kind of like a telestrator. Oh my god, it's fascinating.
I thought that was a good idea.
That's the version we voted guilty, by the way. Just so
bullshit. Bullshit.
This is a good idea. Jesus. That's like the theme of both this and Star Wars. It's like, who the hell thought this was a good idea?
Precisely.
Like the other sister. Jesus.
But
God.
like, in terms of how I feel about the movie, if I have to choose between masterpiece, piece of shit, it's masterpiece of shit. Like, it's not for me. It's not something that I particularly get a lot out of, but the fact that it has connected with so many people, whether ironically or unironically, is an achievement. And I don't think that you can necessarily brush it away with the typical, well, that has the marks of a bad movie, so thus it fills it A, B, C, done. It's not an ABC movie in any way,
three
really.
of us landed in the room, too.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I really wish I could have been part of that discussion, but I'm glad that it was expressed in some way.
Oh, you didn't hear it at all.
So how would you have ruled then, Ryan? It sounds like you would have said not guilty.
Yeah, I mean, if you asked me 2 months ago, I would have said probably guilty. Today, I would say not guilty.
I know, but you know what? This is another one. Lori had to drop, as I mentioned before, we did the house that Jack built with her, where I had to prosecute, and I really like that movie. And here's the problem: I really like Showgirls. I'm a huge fan of this movie, and I wanted to prosecute it from what I thought were the movie's strongest points. So I wanted to take as a given this reappraisal of it, this idea of the satire, the commentary. And Paige, I gotta say, you kind of came out of left field on me by saying like, that's actually not what's important. I was like, oh, well, that's kind of everything I wrote. So I'm just going to kind of keep shoehorning it in here until the case is over.
As a defender, it's like always hard sometimes to be like, preparing for the offenses argument. It's usually not the other way around.
Like I love. Yeah, I mean, Paige came at it from this angle that it's so bad it's good, which as a courtroom we do reject. We have it's so bad it's entertaining, it's so bad it's likable, it's so bad it's watchable, but at no point can it be so bad it's good.
And I think I tried to not fully lean on that, I hope, and point out the value beyond that, because I don't think that's quite right. It's almost like it's so depraved that it becomes larger than its intention, and it's a reflection of them to me. And
I agree with that.
I do agree with you, Paige. I think you pivoted very well after that, because your opening statement was pretty funny, you know, like it's like so bad it goes like it's so guilty it goes all the way around the horn to being innocent again. And I'm
It
like,
fucked itself in the ass.
Yeah, like I could get behind that. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, you
A
know,
lot of that.
that's interesting. You know, like I wish we had more time to talk about it in the jury.
More than we did.
I know, right? It's so depraved. I'm such an egotistical bastard. You wonder why I love Showgirls, right? It's all ego.
Paige is my new favorite guest. Apologies.
I'm telling Lori, and I'm telling Liesel.
Yeah, don't tell me. I'm gonna get upset.
Liesel's my favorite, so she can.
Yes.
Poor Lori. Okay, Lori's my favorite again. Jeez.
Lori's amazing, but yeah, I wish she was here right now to.
Let's form an alliance, Paige. I don't know what that means, but let's do it.
Yes, I'm into it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sold. But yeah, no,
Ooh.
I do think it's really
Liesel or Paige.
Well, neither, please, please.
Okay.
Yeah. No, and I don't know. I guess one thing that I wanted to kind of talk about too, again, that we didn't really touch on, was like, does that matter? Like intent?
I actually do think intent is very important to whether a movie is successful or not. If you have a goal and you fail to meet it, to me, your movie's failed. You've made a bad movie. And to me, this movie was, Verhoeven and Esterhazy trying to talk about the exploitation of women in entertainment, and they may have gone all the way around the horn and ended up exploiting women themselves.
Oh yes, and in my opinion, they make it about themselves. Like it is about them. It's
that
like,
may make it bad, but again, if this is where this goes all the way around the horn, Ben, if the point is to make like if the mission statement is about the exploitation of women in the entertainment industry, and they manage to make something so meta that is itself a representation of exploitation, like they've actually succeeded.
I think you're giving him too much credit there. Like
no,
I said,
they did it. They meant to do something intentional. They ended up being the criminals themselves, and that in itself is like unintentionally a snapshot of exploitation within the entertainment industry itself. So it is over Verhoeven and Esterhazy's head. They were unable to actually do what they wanted to do, and yet they managed to do what they wanted to do. They just didn't realize that, as they said, the mirror held up to them. They were the dudes exploiting.
Yeah, exactly. It's very similar to the house that Jack built in that regard.
See, I do not see that at all. Like, I think he's a totally, totally different kind of filmmaker, you know? And I like some of Lars von Trier's stuff. It's interesting. Like, I just don't see it in the same way at all. Like, the way that, like, I see that more as, like, Lynch, you know? Where it's, like, very deliberate awkwardness that's, like, playing on that kind of stuff almost that Verhoeven is doing inadvertently, where it's just like delivering this offline in a kind of overly dramatic way while like weird music plays in the background, you know? Like I feel like those guys are playing off of that, you know, and are kind of stepping back, you know? And it's interesting, like you accept it with David Lynch. So you talk about perfect tits in the whole movie, you know? Talk about David Lynch, is that like how many women are in any way out of line, in any way imperfect in any of his movies, unless they're like Grace Zabriskie or like someone being a freak, you know? Or like horrifying. Like there's so many films that we just accept, like, okay, like the women are perfect. Like they look fucking insane. Like they're like totally sexual. They deliver these weird lines. They maybe kind of can't act, you know? It's almost like Heather Graham in Twin Peaks or something like that. Like it's like
I just want to put one fine point on when I say it was like the house that Jack built. What I mean to say was that the directors thought they were holding up mirrors to culture, but it was really more mirrors to themselves. And I think that's more so what I meant. I wasn't comparing Verhoeven very much.
One other thing I do want to touch on, because we did talk about it, I do not think that this film is intended to be sexy, because I don't know any cisgendered heterosexual males who are turned on by this movie. I'm sure there are some, But I think Liesel or someone brought it up. It's like eventually you see their boobs for like 2 hours and you're desensitized to it. You no longer really care. And there's that. I think they talk about it in Jeffrey's documentary, "You Don't Know Me," on Amazon Prime, available everywhere. You should check it out. But like when Gina Gershon pulls down Nomi's top halfway through the movie, and it's supposed to be like a big reveal. It's like, no, we've seen your boobs for 90 minutes now. Nobody cares. Like, to the point where, yeah, you become numb to the sexuality, and it's basically not there. It's, to me, it is not only is it not a sexy movie, it's not supposed to be. I don't think.
I completely agree with you there, and it fits well with like his other stuff that he's done with like RoboCop, and it's like overt with what he's trying to do. So I don't think it was trying to be sexy at all.
I think it's unintentionally accurate, like about the exploitation of women in entertainment. But the thing that Dylan did bring up, it's that that they never show the other side of the coin. They never show someone who really is empowered. Everybody's exploited, really. And there's never that alternate where it's like, well, this is what you could be if you wanted to be. I mean, at the end, Nomi leaves. She goes to LA, and she's about to relive the whole movie again. She's about to fall into everything that just happened when she goes to Las Vegas 2.0.
I'm not watching it again.
Like, you're trapped in the patriarchy and you'll never get out. We're all gonna die.
Right. But what I do want to is we see that there are ways to do sex work where the woman is allowed to have agency. You look at things like OnlyFans. Of course, I can't say I don't know how much OnlyFans actually takes from their users. They probably do take a chunk of change from them. So there is probably some. But I mean, I don't know if they're like Kickstarter and they take some of your money or not. But
I mean, like, I guess my point too, like, is like maybe those trends exist, but like largely, like I feel like sex work is still really stigmatized, even within the feminine.
Oh yeah, big time.
Oh, it's definitely stigmatized. But the question is
should it be? That's the question.
Well, no, the answer is no. It shouldn't be. But the thing is, where does sex work exist where it's not someone being exploited by someone else, when someone is basically an independent contractor for themselves?
Perfect example of that, actually. It's not putting, not everybody agrees with putting all sex work under the blanket of sex work, but I'm going to say, for the sake of this argument, I don't think that sex work should be stigmatized at all. And I've actually been really in awe of a lot of my friends who are in that business, and what they've done, what they've been able to do in quarantine. So I made friends with this performer on a photo shoot a couple years ago, and she is somebody who has worked at Jumbo's as a dancer. And she, in this time in quarantine, she and a bunch of her friends have started doing their own show on Zoom every week. Mm-hmm. They are able to, because they're all, artsy weirdos, they're able to do absolutely whatever they want. So it's gotten very strange. It's gotten very political. It's gotten very artsy and weird and gross and sexy and funny. And they take donations. They take tips as they dance, just like at an establishment. But because there's no overhead, because there's nobody calling the shots either on how much they earn or their artistic decisions, it's become insanely popular. They put up, they started from nothing, and just recently they put up a bunch of bus bench ads all over town, and in 6 weeks they made $6,000 to donate to charitable organizations, and that's on top of tipping, of getting paid themselves. So I do think that it's possible, and I think that the work that people are doing to help destigmatize it and to bring awareness of how much sex workers are real people and that they deserve dignity and safety and support just like everybody else is really changing people's minds about what is like opening doors, and the fact that this is such a weird time and people are taking these moments to like sort of tear down some of the old institutions and ways that we think of things as being done is like definitely giving people agency in sex work.
Yeah, I think we all agree it's definitely possible. I think we all want to see it normalized more.
Yeah.
Right.
And,
Yeah,
and that's the goal. And that's what this movie, it doesn't give you that. This movie never shows you that option. It just says sex
That's
work
not
is
even what it's about.
exploitation.
Well, and that's like what does.
Yeah.
Nothing, but I think this movie would have been way more successful to me on that, on its mission statement of, sex work is exploited, if Nomi was able to somehow go use her body really to her own ends. And you almost see her having more power at Cheetahs than she ends up having at the Stardust.
Yeah.
Right? Like, like Robert Davi says, you just made, $300 on a lap dance. And it's like, well, yeah, that is pretty, Robert Davi takes his chunk, but Robert Davi is, to me, he's kind of middle of the road. Like, he says some shitty things, but I don't know how honest he is about the blowjob stuff or whether he's just fucking with people. But, but
I love Robert Davi, man.
Yeah, he's not all the way shitty because he's there. He is kind of shitty, but he's not all the way shitty in the way that
97%.
In the way that Zach Carey is.
Yeah, like Kyle MacLachlan's character straight up lying to her. Robert Davi's not lying.
Yes, that's so important. He's honest about it. I'm putting your body out there. He's very straightforward about what you're doing and what you're going to get, and he's honest.
Oh yeah, because the cheetah and the Stardust are the same thing. That's the whole point. The cheetah is just a more honest version. I mean, James says it.
Let's hear Paige. Paige is saying no.
I would say no. I mean, he forces her into doing something she doesn't want to do, and I just
that is true.
Yeah,
she doesn't want to do the dance.
Irredeemable, and he's he wants her to do it. You think she walked? Wasn't it 500 and he took 2?
It's 500 and he takes 2. I'm sure the club share. I think that's the club share, but
for what? For pushing her into doing something she didn't want to do, and then she works to make some dummy come in his pants. I don't know.
that's very true. I would say just
what happened was correct.
I would just say though, on the spectrum, I would put Davi as a closer to decent than Zach Carey and the rest of the Stardust people. And I would like to say that Robert Davi and Mama came to see her show, and clearly not for any gain themselves. They literally came seemingly to support her and congratulate her. And he says one fucked up thing before he leaves, but he actually shows up to the show and compliments her.
Seemingly for no explicable reason at all. Yeah.
It seems to be that he really doesn't.
I think it is fully bullshit. That to me is what I'm talking about. It's just what the fuck choice is that? What is that? That's not that's beyond sabotage. That's just nonsensical. What the fuck is that? You didn't need to have that. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't have anything to do with anything else. It doesn't lead to anything else. What the fuck is that? I think that's fucking insane. And I agree with you. It is one of the least offensive things that happens in the movie. And that is not the lowest. The boat show gets lower. Oh my god! It's just.
And that's the point. But if you compare the girls at Cheetahs with the girls at Stardust, I mean, the girls at Cheetahs are supportive. They invite Nomi home to smoke weed. They're kind of like a little sisterhood. They're not really that catty. They don't sabotage each other. And then all the girls at the Stardust are cutting each other down, cutting each other's throats, pushing them downstairs, throwing beads under each other's feet. Clearly there's more of a family and a tribe with Cheetahs than you ever get at Stardust.
I mean, I'd just like to remind everyone, Paige defended this movie.
I know, I was just about to say that.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, that's the thing too, and that was my defense, is it is a perfect dichotomy. It's both absolutely depraved and perfect. Because to me, it's just we talk about sex scenes and stuff like that, and it's there are very few sex scenes that are actually convincing to me. Sorry, they're bad. They're bad almost every time. There's a couple at once where I'm whoa, that's fucking hot, and then for the most part, they're really not. They're really goofy. They make me uncomfortable, and I just love the over the top fish flopping scenes.
Oh, don't say fish around Liesel.
No. I'll allow it.
Trigger warning: fish flop. Yeah. Horrible. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, to me, that is, I love that because it's and basically the fast comes are basically the only ones that are real, and it's because they're so depraved. And like I don't know, it's sad to like not see like I don't know, to just see such like sparse representation of like passion that's like
yeah, and there's none in this movie at all. Now but guilty it was. We did talk a lot longer about it.
Can we
in
do
our
it again?
trial analysis.
Sweet 16.
But Super Sweet 16. Thanks for tuning in.
so much.
Now let's get suggestions from everyone and go around. Paige, you're first. What is a movie that people should see?
Yeah, I mean I have a bunch, obviously.
Let's pick one.
Cool, yeah. And obviously, I mentioned my Chinatown and Showgirls. But I think aside from that, I have a really great one that is perfect for this time, which is sort of a lesser-known Czech film that I had the pleasure of seeing with my friend who's a Czech expert. And it's by the...
Czechspert.
Yes, indeed. It's by the famous and fabulous Vera Chytilova. And it's called The Inheritance, or Fuck Off, Guys, Good Day. It's so good. God damn it. Everybody should try to find it if they can. That's so fantastic. I really love that. Yeah, but it's kind of hard to find. So if you can't find that, try to watch Society, because that's amazing.
Dylan.
All right, so I'm gonna recommend an interesting one I watched called The Hoax, starring Richard Gere and Alfred Molina. It's actually based on the true story of Clifford Irving, who's selling a biography of Howard Hughes. There's lots of twists and turns, and like I said, actually based on a true story. It's one of those, truth is stranger than fiction kind of things. And Richard Gere is actually really good in it, which is not something I say about a lot of Richard Gere movies, except for maybe that and Pretty Woman, so. No, so The Hoax, just a very, very interesting movie if you get the opportunity to watch it.
Do not see Richard Gere's version of G-Force.
Oh my stop, man. Stop.
Okay. Liesel, what do you got?
Oh, hey. So if we're talking about movies, like sexy lady movies, noir, sort of like let's get into a seedy world of people where almost none of the characters are redeemable in any way, but it's still, sort of the Showgirls idea.
The Wizard of Oz.
But something that I think really achieves the fuck out of the best version of that. I just watched, and maybe everybody else has seen this already, but I just watched The Last Seduction recently for the first time. And oh my God, that movie's fucking great. Linda Fiorentino. It looks like, one of those 90s thrillery sort of like Fatal Attraction, Basic Instinct kind of things. But it's so good. It's so elevated. It's so enjoyable and weirdly subversive and noir and sexy. Cannot recommend highly enough.
All right, awesome. Ryan.
I technically have two recommendations today. Like most in this court, I emphatically endorse our surprise witness Jeffrey McHale's fantastic documentary, You Don't Know Me. It is surprisingly thoughtful and beautifully assembled. April Kidwell's story in particular really resonated with me. And my recommendation proper is another film that was perceived as a piece of shit when it arrived, but has now been recognized as at least a technical masterpiece, the Wachowski sisters' Speed Racer from 2008. It continues the stylized madness of Robert Rodriguez and Frank Miller's Sin City, and in many ways surpasses it. Spritel aside, it's amazing. It's streaming for free on HBO Max.
Ben, what do you got for us?
Well, Showgirls ain't my genre, so I was trying to think of the closest thing to it I've seen that I somewhat liked that had that sort of circular, is it bad, is it good? And I landed on The Transgressor, which is also known as School of the Holy Beast. It's a Japanese Pinku Eiga or pink film. If you're at all protective or self-conscious over the Christian faith, it ain't the film for you. But story-wise, it's all there. It's got, like lesbian nuns and raping priests and self-flagellation. It's trying to get that visceral feeling going on. But while that all sounds like kind of bad and seedy, like it's shot really brilliantly. You'd see like these horrible things and then it'd like cut to like beautiful rose petals floating down and then self-flagellation and then beautifully lit statues. So yeah, it sort of reminded me of Showgirls in that way.
All right, awesome. And for my recommendation, if you haven't seen it, Jeffrey's You Don't Know Me documentary. We mentioned it was on Prime, but if you like the topic of Showgirls and you just want to see a lot more stuff behind the scenes, it is a very interesting perspective on the film, and gave me some things I hadn't considered before. So definitely check out You Don't Know Me. It's new, and it kind of re-raised Showgirls back into the public conversation this year. And for another movie, I'd like to recommend 1996's Striptease, with Demi Moore, if only to make sure people stop confusing Striptease with Showgirls. So see both the movies, and then you'll definitely know that there is a solid difference between the two. They are separate films, not to be confused together.
Yeah, that one's fantastic, and thank you again, Jeffrey, for being on as witness.
Yeah, for sure. Now, and speaking of other people's projects, Liesel, do you have any kind of project you want to talk about before we wrap up?
I'm just gonna say my continued work is just becoming a better person and improving the world and the hearts and minds around me.
I love it. And Paige, same question. What do you got going on? Anything you want to plug before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I echo Liesel's statement. I'm trying to also support Black Lives Matter and be a better feminist and try to move forward with strength. And part of that, I'm a musician, and I have a project that I lead that's like an art collective called Irrevery, and I make a lot of films for myself, and I make music, and I make books, and all sorts of stuff. And I'm about to release another music video I made for a really cool artist called Mezzanine Swimmers. So yeah.
Do you have like a YouTube page we should follow?
Yeah, YouTube, Spotify. You can find us everywhere. If you just Google Irrevery, Irrevery, you can find our full-length record and some live performances and some music videos, and just stay in touch. Yeah, kind of laying low in these next couple months as we figure everything out. But we'll be releasing some new material when it's appropriate.
All right, very cool, very cool. Yeah. Well, this has been a real marathon, and we've had a lot of interesting technical problems and challenges, but we had a lot of great guests, and we had great conversation about what I think is a very important movie. I want to thank Paige Johnson-Brown for joining us. I want to thank Lorry Kikta and Jeffrey McHale for joining us as witnesses. And of course, I want to thank Kirk Thatcher, and of course, always Liesel Hanson for joining us on our jury.
Woo-hoo!
And we'd love to have you back again. With that, we are all out of show for this week. We'd like to thank you for 16 wonderful years.
Episodes. Maynard.
Oh, episodes. Yes, sorry. 16 sweet episodes of Reels of Justice. And with any luck, here's to 16 more. So we hope you'll join us next time as the Reels of Justice keep turning.
Later. Take care.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.